My name is Hellen Namawejje. I'm a lecturer at Makerere University, and I'm here to present my work on the determinants of financial literacy levels among rural women in Uganda. I'm also a postdoctoral fellow at University of Pretoria, South Africa. Next slide. Well, different scholars have talked about financial literacy in various forms, but the most outstanding one is that financial literacy is the ability of an individual to make financial sound decisions in everyday life. So the fact is that it all needs about having the knowledge and then the financial behavior. That's when an individual can be able to make financial decisions. Next slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. Financial literacy has been seen as a global concern, both in the developing and also in the developed world. But we find that a lot of research has been done and is showing that most women are the ones that are mostly affected when it comes to financial literacy compared to men. And in Uganda, a lot of programs have been put by the government to ensure that these women are supported to see that they come out of poverty. And the government goes ahead to see that they even give them projects to lead in the different villages, but the results are still astonishing to the value of money and the effort that has been invested in these particular initiatives by the government, because the intended results are not seen. Next slide. So the focus of this study is that we are saying that among the various challenges that have failed to come out with the different initiatives that have been put by the government, we are also attributing it to the low levels of financial literacy among these women. And so this particular study intends to look at the determinants of financial literacy levels among rural women within Luweero district as the case study. But specifically, we are looking at the socio-demographic factors, socio-economic, as well as the basic knowledge on financial literacy and how all these three affect the levels of financial literacy of these women within Luweero district. So looking at the areas of study, like I mentioned, I'm looking at Luweero district. When you look at the map of Uganda, where there is the orange, that is the Luweero district where this study was conducted. This particular district has got a lot of political interest back home, and it's a reason as to why they go further really to invest in a lot of initiatives to see that people in this particular district come out of poverty. And so that's where I did my study from. And the different study variables that I considered, the outcome variables, the financial literacy levels, and the explanatory variables, or the dependent variables, we had age, education, use of money, marital status, having a budget, family and school influence, among others. Next slide. So how did we measure the different levels of financial literacy? We used a questionnaire for data collection after going into an intensive discussion. How can we really make a questionnaire that would give us the effective result? We went further to look. We used we had a score quiz whereby these women were given a quiz which had 10 questions, and these questions were about what is simple interest to them, how do they compound, what do they understand by interest, how do you compute a simple and compound interest, then issues of time value of money inclusion, in case of a business, how do you compute the profits, losses, expenditures, etc. So all these questions were within, they are the ones that determine our financial literacy score. And there were 10 questions, we scored them, later we converted them to percentage, depending on the score that a particular woman got. So based on the sample we had, we find that the minimum value was 10%, implying that this particular woman only scored 1 out of the 10 questions, which we converted. And then the maximum value was 100. Within our study group, we had 2 women that had gotten to tertiary education, but the mean score was 62.32%. We later went further to categorize the score into 2 levels, having those that are financially literate and then those that were not financially literate. So, and our threshold was the mean value. So a woman who was below the mean value they scored 52%. So with the different key determinants, we looked at education and we saw that women who had tertiary education and secondary education were more likely to be financially literate compared to those that were not. And looking at the income levels, those who had between 15,000 and 25,000 Ugandan shillings were less likely to be financially literate compared to those that had above 500,000. Next slide. Other key determinants, we looked at financial literacy, and we saw that a woman who was divorced or separated was less likely to be financially literate compared to those women that were married. And also the issue of age came into interplay, though it was not significant. And we saw that the odds of increasing financial literacy are predicted to grow more as this particular woman grows up. Next slide. Other key factors that we had, we also looked at if a woman ever received financial training, and if this woman made a home budget and was a specialized buyer. And we saw that women who ever received financial literacy, have home budgets, as well as were specialized buyers, were more likely to be financially literate compared to those that were not. And women who never had business ownership were less likely to be financially literate compared to those that had business. Other factors included financial family influence and school influence also contributed to a big factor on women who were financially literate compared to other factors like using different sources of media, friends, relatives, life experience, among others. Next slide. And then finally, on the key factors still, we asked these women, in case they have got excessive money, what do they use it for? And we found that those who lent it out and also bought jewel or gold were more likely to be financially literate compared to those who just used it for food consumption purposes. And we also asked them, how about in case when there's an option of bankruptcy, what do they do? We found that those who went ahead to use the bank loans were more likely to be financially literate compared to those that went in for family. Because, I mean, by the time you go in for a government loan, it implies at least you have prior knowledge on how you are going to process this particular loan. And so those women were financially literate. Next slide. So what is our conclusion? We are saying that training of women with different key financial skills, for example, on how to save, do the budgeting, do the investment, could help them make clear financial decisions. And in the long run, will support them to have good standards of living. And also, financial education should be embraced at all stages of life, because we saw that age was really an important factor. As somebody grows, then the part of they tend to improve their financial literacy skills. Business ownership, family, and school influence also play a big role in improving the levels of financial literacy. Next slide. So what are we recommending? Constant training programs on financial literacy should be embraced by the government, and also at different levels of learning in schools, in different trainings, in seminars, and so on, as well as financial education should also be embraced, because this study showed that when education with somebody who has got education can easily make proper financial decision. So financial education should also be really enhanced in propelling financial literacy levels. Next slide. My take-home message is that being financially literate is every woman's right. If we can support women to understand how they can be able to become financially literate, it won't only help the homes where they stay, but also the country at large. So being financially literate is every woman's right. I would like to acknowledge this work was supported by a grant from the Carnegie Corporation of New York through the University of Pretoria, and also the Fire Leaf Leadership Program, where my postdoctoral is, where I'm doing my postdoc from. The last slide. Thank you so much. That was about my research and to give me an opportunity to present on this conference.